very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. Obviously, you know Mr. Maurice Levy very well, so I don't need to give any more of a flattering introduction there, needless to say that, of course, he is le grand fromage here today. So we're going to get into a discussion about the outlook going forward, because obviously, as everybody around the world knows, advertisers are very much viewed as a barometer of consumer confidence and economic health going forward. Where do you see the future, Maurice?
I'm a bit disappointed because when we met before the lunch, you told me that you will conduct this interview in French.
Ah, who wants me to do that?
Okay, we know that there is a correlation between the economy and the advertising spend. We are in a situation which is quite paradoxical because we have a balance sheet situation of most of the corporation, which is one of the best we have seen for years. They are healthy, solid, with a lot of cash and very little debt. And despite this, they are not investing, not enough. We see some markets which are doing quite well, and this is mainly the US, and some emerging markets which are growing faster than the Western world. But the current situation in Europe is really concerned. And we see not only in the UK, but also in France. Southern Europe, it's about to be normal because we are back to what was the investment in the early 90s. Yep. We are back 20 years ago in terms of the level of investment in those countries. I'm speaking under the control of Steve King, and if there is a mistake, Steve, you come on board and you deliver the speech. The situation is quite embarrassing because this is demonstrating a lack of confidence of the CEOs for Europe.
Would you say that's a lack of leadership that is also filtering down from the political sphere? Because it's very difficult for the average consumer to know where to put their pennies if obviously everything changes every 5 minutes.
Every 5 years rather than 5 minutes, and every 5 minutes when it comes to executing a plan. What is interesting is that today we had the crisis of who responsible. It's me. I'm too close. That's the French habit. I'm sorry.
I've had enough wine for that, yeah.
After the crisis, we had the euro crisis. During the euro crisis, we can understand that CEOs were very much concerned about what could happen, and they have been very cautious about the investment, particularly in Europe. That's fine, and we can accept that. But since August, we are no longer in a euro crisis, and we have seen with the Cyprus situation that this has been well mastered, except for the people of Cyprus. But it has not been a big damage, and the currency has not changed, has not moved enormously. It's just a little bit. And we should normally have a situation of confidence. But you see, if you look at Europe, you have the UK, which has a very interesting policy, particularly if you are living in the UK, which is to lower the taxes and to pray for growth. And that's good because if it does work, this is excellent, growth will be there. If it doesn't work, then the first thing which has happened is that the people have saved some money, and second is that you can still raise the taxes. In France, we are in the opposite situation. We raise the taxes to the point that the Conseil Constitutionnel, which is our Supreme Court, said, stop it.
Yeah.
This is too much.
How concerned are you about that personally, the impact on French businesses? Because actually, if you take a look at François Hollande's policies, he's not just hitting the people who own those big French companies that, by the way, increase France's standing on the world.
Yes,
he's actually hitting the companies themselves as well.
On that front, I have been well served, personally. because I have served as a very good example of the CEO making a lot of money during the electoral campaign. So I'm very familiar with the situation.
And what is your view on the situation then? How's that going to impact
I have
France
a point
as an
of view which is
advertising market?
obviously biased because of that specific situation. But there is two aspects. There is the fact that he has decided a prohibitive rate, which is something which really was unacceptable for the people. And we have seen not only Depardieu, but a lot of people, and we almost every day or every other day, I receive a call. Only this week, last week I received 2 calls, and this week already 2 calls of friends saying, okay, see you in London. Okay, you traveling on Tuesday? No. I'm staying in London, and
they're leaving for good.
And they are leaving for good, and for good, I don't know if it's good, but they are leaving. They are leaving.
But that's the individual who may, for instance, own a company.
That's individuals.
But the
for the
companies
corporation,
as well are being heavily taxed.
No, for companies it's even worse, because what has done this policy is to stop the investment. And people who are keen to invest have decided during the campaign that they will wait. And since the campaign, they have decided, since the election, they have decided that it's much better to wait a little bit more and to know exactly what will happen, or to invest in other countries. And this is ending with a situation which is not extremely positive for the country. We are facing an unemployment rate which is one of the highest we had, and probably today we will beat the highest number, because we will see the number by 6 p.m. This afternoon, Paris time, and all the people are expecting the rate to climb a little bit more. So it's a tough situation, and it's a question of confidence. You know, in the economy, you have some rational aspect and you have some irrational aspect. And most of the time, it's what your guts tell you to do. And when you are a CEO, okay, I trust, I have to do that. I believe in it, and I do it.
Do you have that trust at the moment?
And personally, yes, I have no problem. And I have invested, including personally in France, because I'm a citizen of this country. I love my country, and I will not do anything against my country. But the vast majority of the corporations, and including myself for Publicis, I'm investing in France, but the vast majority of the investment that I'm doing are in countries where I expect that we will have better growth, or I expect that this will be better bet for the future.
Yeah. And
clearly, currently, it's not Europe. Well, Europe is not really the region of the world which is the most promising for the future.
Well, this is reflected in all of the figures I think we're very familiar with coming out of you, your competitors at WPP, and also the Zenith Optomedia. Yes, that's right. WPP. and also the kind folks at Zenith Optomedia obviously keep their finger on the pulse. Emerging markets. So if that's where all the growth is going to be coming from, are companies like Publicis going to carry on making acquisitions there? You're at the helm of something like nearly 800 companies at the moment. That must be quite a challenge.
This is quite a challenge, but I think that is something which is quite common to all the companies. The 3 letters, they have the same problem.
Yes.
The 3 letters. Or although, because you know, in our business, it's a business of people. We create some operation, or we acquire operation. We have to protect the culture. We have to make sure that the people feel good within that organization. And we have little benefit of scale. So merging into a huge department store is not something which will do a lot of good to our clients.
So it's best to keep the distinct brands,
So
which is of course
we need to
WPP's strategy as well, I might add.
As I said, everyone, so there is no magic here, and we have to protect this and to make sure that the people are protecting their culture and making sure that the talent are protected. So that is something which is clear. Regarding emerging market, it is a second area for us of growth. The first area of growth is digital, and including the old continent. We are growing in digital, and the latest major investment that we did was in a company located in the Netherlands, but the largest operation is in the UK, which is LBI. And it's all about digital, and the digital segment is growing much faster than analog. Analog is unfortunately declining while digital is growing. And the second area is fast growing market. We have 26% of our revenue which are coming from emerging market. We want to bring that to 35%.
By
so
when?
We need 2016, 2017, I will not be there. It's somebody else who will do that, but this is the objective we have.
If you take a look at digital, that must be like trying to catch a moving target, if you like, because consumers' consumption patterns change, the technology changes every 5 minutes. You might say every 5 years.
No, every second. Here you have...
Your thoughts about that, though, because that must be quite difficult, identifying a strategy in the long term, committing money to it, when obviously it's a moving target.
Yes, that is something, okay. Going back to not my youth, but a moment of my education, I'm an engineer in IT, so this is an area that I know a little bit. It has nothing to do with what it is today, but the idea of obsolescence is something which is common to me. And we know that we have to cope to newness, to progress, to change all the time, to evolve with the progress which are made. And this is something which is not that difficult. What is difficult is to find the new trends and to invest in the new trends, but to adapt and to change the organization, the culture, the tools, and the systems in order to cope with the new development of digital. This is not very complicated.
So what do you see as the key trends then in digital for the next year?
In digital today, it's clear that there is two major trends. One coming from a small area today, because it does represent roughly 1% of the global spend, which is mobile communication, and this is growing extremely fast. And the second is about social networks. But there is an area which is extremely interesting, because it's sitting between communication and sales, which is e-commerce. And e-commerce is something which was at a point in time the specificity of some companies, like only e-commerce company, and now because of the fight for space, for distribution, for testing new approaches, you have a lot of companies who are multi-channels,
yep.
and e-commerce is just one of them. And I guess that every corporation, everyone who's producing a product tomorrow will have a distribution systems through retailers and through e-retail, either through e-retailers or direct e-commerce.
Which obviously they've been investing in for some time now. But I'm glad you mentioned the issues of e-commerce and also mobile telephony, social networking, because that raises privacy concerns as well, doesn't it?
It does raise the privacy concern, but not only e-commerce, but you have this with simply what is going on already today when it comes to all the data which exist and which are sitting in a lot of corporations, and what is the use of the data and how far you can go in targeting someone and in using private data.
So how far do you think you should be able to go, especially at the helm of a huge company like yours?
Okay, we are a French company, and since the holding company, and since 1978, there is what we call la Commission Informatique et Liberté, Commission Nationale Informatique et Liberté, la CNIL, which has defined very clearly a set of rules on what you can do and what you can't do. And this is highly regulated, and this is something for which we have extremely strict rules.
Is that a good or a bad thing?
I consider personally that it's a very good thing. I will tell you a story. This is some 12 years ago. I was receiving a lot of startups, and there was a young Israeli startup who came, and they were showing me a tool and say, okay, go to a bank account. And we went to a bank account. And we are doing, I don't remember what, the transaction, and suddenly all the numbers were falling down, and the screen has been scratched. Say, you need a new banker.
The virus.
It was not a virus, it was an intrusion system. And they said, okay, now try to get to buy something. And went to a site which was about cars, and suddenly you have a stripe and the noise of an engine, boom, and the screen has been scratched. You are looking for this type of car,
yep,
and these are the best offers. Said you can't do that anyway. If you do that,
so they will not be selling you that
we
software.
will not be associated with
yeah,
you, because you cannot show the people that you are over their shoulders looking at what they are
yeah,
doing in the intrusion of their life when they are in their home doing something which is private. And I think that there are some limits to what we have to do, and we have to accept to live with these limits, and we should not cross some lines, because people have the right,
yeah,
we have the right to live, and we have the right to do the best possible work for our clients, and to make sure that they have a return on investment, with ROI, by the way, which is Zenith Optimedia for the people who don't
yeah,
know. ROI is something
return
which you should ask
indeed,
them, they will tell you. When you do this, I think it should be deservicing the client to go too far in the intrusion of the life of the people.
So where does the balance lie? Because, for instance, I was having a conversation with a gentleman here before who was saying that if we can't collect cookies, well, we're just going to have to make people pay for things.
No, you can collect cookies, that's clear, and you can collect cookies, and I'm recommending that we collect cookies. What you cannot do is from those cookies to keep the personal data. As long as you agglomerate the cookies and you develop then some models with some algorithm, and based on that you draw some laws by which you say, okay, according to that, this is the target I would like to have, because this is target which will buy my product. This is fine, because you are not using personal data. You are amalgamating a lot of data together, using then some mathematical formula in order to make sure that you reach the right target.
So you have a duty of care to protect that data, but you also have a duty of not being invasive in the way you use that data.
It is a very important duty. I think that we have to be protective of the data of the consumers, and the more we are protective, the more we are respecting their lives, the more we are effective. That is my opinion.
How would you say that regulation, the regulatory environment, particularly coming out of Brussels, also as you're saying, regulation environment in France is particularly tight, how would you say that that's impacting the way big companies in the advertising space do business these days?
Okay, when there is a problem, whatever the problem is, alcohol, tobacco, food, too much fat, too much salt, whatever, the easiest way for the regulators, instead of having a negotiation and discussing with the people and the industries and finding the right way, or taking stringent rules regarding those industries, it is about advertising. You should reduce advertising, or you should not say that, or you should stop saying this. And because people are fragile, and if you are using advertising, you will then accelerate their consumption of such or such. And I think it's wrong. I think that first, I believe a lot in self-regulation. Second, I think that this is the easiest, sorry to say that, but a little bit coward way of politicians and regulators to make a decision, because they are not attacking the core of the issue. They are just doing something and say, okay, this is about advertising, and anyway, who care about advertising? And there is a lot of people who consider that reducing advertising is not a problem, except when they see that some newspapers are shutting down, or some TV channels cannot survive, etc. That is where they start worrying.
So shooting the messenger rather than actually drafting policies in response to those particular social problems. Let's move on and talk about the industry as a whole. So we're at the end of the first quarter of the year. Traditionally, the first quarter of the year is when companies have been making investments in their advertising budgets, but as you said just before, a lot of people sitting on these enormous cash piles.
I think that this year will be different from the other years, and I'm not saying that because it is Passover, so why this night is different from the other nights, but this is simply because I think when you look at the pattern of the year, you see that you will have a retention of investment during the first half, and an acceleration of investment in the second half. And that is the pattern that we are seeing consistently with most of our clients and most of the media. So it's not something which is only a situation for Publicis, it is a situation for the industry. That is how we see the things happening.
So it would be fair to say that the first quarter is now no longer really an indication of future returns to come?
But you have been in that situation already in the past, where we see that the configuration of the year is more a slowdown at the beginning of the year and an acceleration at the second half of the year. People are waiting, and people are anxious to see how things will evolve. I think that they are reassured regarding the euro, so it's no longer a concern. And when we had the Davos meeting, no one was really concerned about the euro. People are hugely concerned about unemployment, and it's interesting to see that CEOs are concerned about unemployment, which was not really one of their concerns in the past.
And particularly youth unemployment, because that's what
Yes,
I wanted to ask you. Advertising is traditionally to the young person in social media. Is that going to change, the demographic you're targeting?
I'm not sure that this will change. I think the way we will be doing it will change, but not the fact that we will be targeting, we'll continue to target the young people, because they are the ones who are the trendsetters. And the trendsetters are not made by people of my age, they are made by the young millennials. And
even if they've got no money to spend, because they don't have a job?
They don't get money to spend, but when you look at, for example, it's something which is quite interesting. When you look at the demonstration which happened Sunday in Paris, or in December in Spain, and people in Spain have a situation which is terrible, terrible, terrible. Unemployment is of people below 25 is at the level of 40%.
Yeah.
and in
above
some
40%.
region 50%, 1 out of 2. So it's a real drama. But by the same token, when you look at the demonstration, they were all with their mobile phone, and they were connected, and it's part of their life. So it's not like in the old days when people were out of job, were disconnected from the company, from the society, and they were left aside the society. They are part of society, and they want their share of what's happening, and they can, I would say, become revolutionaries, but maybe yes.
Scope for social unrest.
So it's a situation which is quite worrying, but the fundamental issue is how to make sure that we can offer a job to these people. And what the point I wanted to make is that when you look back 92, 93, we had the crisis, which was big, etc. And we had a lot of unemployment, and a lot of people have been laid off. And when I was in Davos, this was not a concern. CEOs were not concerned.
Which was slightly ironic, I might point out, actually, that was not a big issue on the table at Davos, despite the fact that there were so many young unemployed people out there. It's a shame.
I'm sorry, I have been part of 3 debates regarding youth unemployment. 3 this year.
So you think it did get as much traction as it needed?
I think so, and I think it was part of the discussion that we had at the IBC. It was also part of the discussion we had at the foundation board, and we are all concerned because we say we have a responsibility towards the society, and we cannot just be content by having good profit and delivering good shareholder value and not at the same time fulfill our responsibility towards the society. And this is something which is quite well spread. It's not, the benefit of being a very old man is that you have been through a lot of situation. And I remember where the king was shareholder value. And the only thing we were caring about was shareholder value. How do we generate shareholder value? Then there has been some other thing regarding sharing, or regarding digital divide and all this kind of thing, or transparency, or corporate social responsibility, or governance, but never, as this year, we had discussion regarding, for Christ's sake, how we CEOs do address the issue of unemployment. And it's the very first time that you see people around the table. Yeah. I was sitting with Muhtar Kent, with a lot of CEOs, and we were discussing this issue as one of the most important topics that we have to address as CEOs.
And what was the conclusion you came to then?
Well, conclusion, there has been several conclusions. The first one is that we have created a group of CEOs and what we call global shapers, which are this young, new group of people at the World Economic Forum, who are most of the time bloggers or social networkers, and we are creating a small body in order to try to get ideas and to see how we can do that. What we, Publicis, we have done with Orange has been to create a fund, and we did that to help startups. What Muhtar has done is to create a fund of $1 million for women in emerging markets. And we are thinking about creating a fund of a real one, a big one, with some banks and some other corporations in order to see how we can help young people to create young startups and companies in order to create jobs.
Let's talk about something a bit more positive for a change, content curation. How high
But
up is that
it is
on your...
positive to address the issue of the young unemployment.
It will be eventually in the long term, absolutely, especially for advertisers.
I hope it will be on the shorter term, and I hope so.
Going on to content curation, though, because that also leads into the argument of what kind of demographic you're targeting. How important is that for a big company like Publicis with 800 companies under your belt?
We have a few companies which are devoted to content. Newcast at Zenith Optimedia World. We have Liquid Thread at Starcom Media Vest. And we are delivering content. Everything that we do in our creative agency is to tell stories. And storytelling is the big name of what we were doing, which is just about content advertising, and which is how to connect the people by telling a story. Clearly, we have so many ways today of communicating, and there is so many possibility of screens, view, etc., that we need more and more content. The most interesting part is that content is generated now by a crowd. It's crowdsourcing a generation of content. But when it comes to brands, and that is essential in today's world, it's interesting to see how things has evolved. Today you cannot think about an operation, a campaign, without thinking about each media with a specificity for each of those media. I remember the time where we had a big idea. Once we have sold the big idea through a storyboard, then we take a junior team, you say, okay, now you do the work for the other ads, and the good agency were using senior team to do that. But it was with the same concept and the same ideas and almost the same layout. Today, it is extremely specific. You need to have a strategy, how to build buzz, how to create an interest, by which media do you start, how do you create a situation where the people will feel engaged, and from engagement they will act. So the process is extremely different, and the media part is very often the thing by which you start. While in the good old days, we had the presentation and then we said, okay, we have just 10 minutes for the media, and by the way, everything is there, so you can read it. It's finished. All this is totally finished. Media strategy and media analysis is something which requires a lot of tools, a lot of scientific approach, and also, and that is the good part, ideas still dominate. And if you have the right intuition, if you understand exactly where the market is going and where the people are going, if you have the right connection, you can build something which is creating a real difference. By the way, this is what we have to do for our clients, is to create difference.
On that note, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. I'd ask you to clearly raise your hand, please identify where you're from.
Yes, you said that for the questions they will be in French.
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Yes, so only the French question will be accepted.
So do we have any questions here for Mr. Maurice Levy, the CEO of Publicis, no less? Any questions?
Oui.
Oui. There you go, in the front.
Oui.
There's a microphone there coming to you.
Oh, thank you. Hello, I'm Chloe Gisner. I'm working for Ogilvy. And I'm very glad to hear you today. And I wanted to know, you hinted that the fact that you may not be there in a few years' time, taking, I guess, a very deserved retreat somewhere. What would you like to be your legacy? What would you like people to say about you when you left?
I never thought of a legacy. I think what is extremely important is that the next generation, the people who will come after me, will do a better job than what I have done. And that is the most important. 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 And that is the And that would be the best legacy. And if I'm failing on that aspect, this will be the worst legacy. So the Publicis today has nothing to do with what Marcel Blanchet has created. He did a wonderful job, but he created a superb operation, but with very limited scope. And I think that without what he has created, Publicis never would have existed. So the foundation were fantastic. And it was relatively easy then to do what I have done. I have little merit. And what I do hope is that when, it's not if, I remember somebody very optimistic, he said, if one day I die. Somebody said, it's not if. He was disappointed. It showed. Oh yes. Sorry. Now, there are some intangible in Publicis which are extremely important. And what I would very much like, and those intangible, I have not created them. Maybe I have enhanced some, maybe I have not given as much value to some other I should, but those intangible are about human values, from integrity, ethical, to respect, and to Marcel Blanchet used to say, soyez heureux. In English we say, have fun, but soyez heureux is more than have fun. And we have done a lot, and all the people who joined Publicis and all the CEOs and the organization that we have been able to acquire and integrate have protected and enriched those values. And I think that these are the most important aspects, and they have not created them. The only thing I have done is to protect them.
And I'd personally like to say I do hope that whoever succeeds you, Monsieur Lévy, has your sense of humour and wit, because I'll have the chance to interview them over the next 5 years. Do we have another question coming from anybody else in the room? No? Not yet?
Yes,
There we go, over there. Oh, we've got a couple over there, thanks. So to this gentleman just in the front here with the blue tie first. Thank you. Yeah.
Nick Edgley from the IAA. Two things I want to ask you, if I may. What's the hardest thing about your job? You and I are probably slightly the same age. With the digital world, what's your feeling about how it's all going? And I know you've sort of covered that a little bit, but so firstly, what's the hardest part of your job? And secondly, you know, where's it all going, I suppose?
The hardest part of the job has always been people. Always. How to build a casting for an account, how to make sure that these great people have to work together and to create the environment that will allow them to work together, how to create the right combination, and to give enough confidence that people feel comfortable enough, and not too much confident that people sleep at work. So they have to be energized, they have to work. So it is a balance, and how to find the right balance, that is the hardest part. Hiring the right people and making sure also that we have not a policy of hiring and firing, which is quite common in our industry. This is also extremely important, and I'm trying to fight against that, but sometimes it is impossible to do otherwise. That is the hardest part. I have always felt it was hard, and it is still hard today. This has not changed. Regarding where our business is going, it's something which is quite interesting, because there was this famous sentence from, I don't know if it was the CEO of Kraft or General Foods or whatever, who said, I'm spending $1, I don't know, I know that I'm wasting half of it, but I don't know which part of it. And today, we are not yet absolutely sure, but we can more and more measure, and we can approach to something which is not yet the Holy Grail, but something which is more scientific, and we can limit the part that it is in the wasteland. When you have more data, more targeting, more electronic devices, etc., you can think, okay, everything will, at the end of the day, be about algorithm and mathematics. I think that everything will always be about the big idea and how to make sure, big or not big. A big idea is a client definition, an idea that connects. And it is all about the idea that connects. And if you have the right idea, you have not to worry about algorithm, it will work.